Final Fantasy XVI was a game that tried a ton of new things. It's more pure action hack-and-slash combat, its dark medieval fantasy setting, and it being the first numbered mainline Final Fantasy title to receive an M rating. It's both a beloved and controversial game, and we are slated to get a brand new DLC for it coming very soon, in the form of Final Fantasy XVI The Rising Tide. This DLC is set to add 10 hours of gameplay, and is going to be much bigger than the last DLC, which only added about an hour and a half to 2. This is super exciting, but it has people wondering, is this it for Final Fantasy XVI? It might not be. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for all things Final Fantasy news, because this channel is one that keeps you updated as soon as possible. And today we got some very interesting news from YoshiP, not only about whether he wants to make brand new Final Fantasy XVI content, but also if he's interested in directing a brand new game. Now, whether that's Final Fantasy XVII or not, there is a lot to discuss. Starting out here, we have an interview from Game Informer, where YoshiP says the possibility for more Final Fantasy XVI DLC is not zero. Here is what the article has had to say. It says that first, Echoes of the Fallen was a combat-centric DLC and released the same night. The second DLC, The Rising Tide, is more of an expansive story-focused DLC about the Leviathan icon, who is of course missing from the main game. I also asked if the team known as CBU3 within Square Enix was interested in more 16 DLC. After all, the reason Echoes of the Fallen and The Rising Tide exists is because, quote, after seeing the positive receptions, the positive comments from fans toward the world of Final Fantasy XVI, toward Valisthea, we felt this may be a good opportunity to revisit the game, Yoshida tells me. So again, after finishing Final Fantasy XVI, I did see a lot of comments of people saying that they want more Valisthea, that they want to see more of Clive, Jill, and the rest of the characters. A lot of them also wanted to know more about what happened after the ending. YoshiP then continues saying, that's a difficult question. Yoshida tells me through a translator when I ask more about the DLC. My honest answer is, I don't know at the moment, but at the same time, the possibility isn't zero. I don't want to bar out any real possibilities at this time. The reason being is that we did spend a lot of effort and time creating this game. We put a lot of cutting edge technology into this game, and because of that, we were able to gain a lot of experience, a lot of learnings that we can possibly apply to our next project or title. So my honest feeling is that the team does want to take on a new challenge and move on to a different project. Maybe it's a completely new game, or perhaps in a completely new form of entertainment. But I feel like that might be the best route not just for players, but for us as well too. But again, to reiterate, the possibility of more DLC content for Final Fantasy XVI is not zero. So it's entirely possible that we could get more FF16 DLC after The Rising Tide. That much is exciting if you really enjoyed Final Fantasy XVI. I think that there's a lot of things that I personally would like to see come to the game. More than anything, I would love to see characters other than Clive be playable. I want to play as Jill and Joshua and Sid. If they can make that happen, then I will be very pleased with the game. In fact, it's hard for me to think of anything else that's on the top of my list of content that I'd want from this game. It's something that I think also just probably needs to be done with Final Fantasies going forward, because every time they launch a Final Fantasy title like 15 or 16 where there's only one playable character at first, the first thing that everyone immediately demands is the ability to play as other characters. It's something that Final Fantasy has pretty much always had prior. So I think going forward, they need to have that idea in place from the start that everyone is going to want to play other characters. So going forward with Final Fantasy 17 or whatever they work on next, they need to just know straight out of the gate that that's one of the things that people are going to request. And it is always going to come up. It's unavoidable. So design your battle system and all your game's growth systems allow, if not allowing this to happen on day one, to eventually be patched in at a later point, because I don't see fans backing down from this one at this point. It's always going to come up. Now, this paragraph right here where he talks about how they spent a lot of time working on the technology, this really reminds me of a lot of talk that happened right before Final Fantasy 13 too, where they were talking about how much effort they put into crystal tools and all this other stuff, and how it would be a shame to let all of that go to waste. It'd be really interesting to see if they could ever use this technology, maybe build another game in Valisthea, or do anything else with it like more DLC. But it does seem like that YoshiP wants to move on to an entirely different game from the sound of this second paragraph. I think that YoshiP would also have a lot more freedom in what he wants to do if he did move on to something that was a new IP, and he wouldn't have to be bound to people's expectations of what Final Fantasy is supposed to be. Next, we have the PC version of Final Fantasy XVI, which is reaching its final stages of optimization. Those of you who've been waiting for this game to come to PC, it looks like you won't have to be waiting too much longer. Here's what YoshiP has had to say in an interview with Game Informer. In terms of where we are in development currently, we're trying to figure out the final stages of optimization right now. Yoshida tells me through a translator. When we can release the PC version might be dependent on that, the system requirements and specifications for PC that players will need, so we're trying to figure that out. Naturally, the PC specifications are looking to be somewhat high. He said players can rest assured though that the development of the PC version of Final Fantasy XVI is going smoothly, but in terms of when it's going to come out or when we can announce it, I'd like to ask for more time on that. So yeah, the PC specifications for this game are expected to be pretty high. The PS5 wasn't even able to run this game at a solid 60 frames per second on its performance mode, with the frame rate dipping pretty drastically in towns. However, if you want to know how it's going to run on your PC, they are going to be releasing a demo for the PC version. Here's what the article has had to say. Yoshida tells me before Final Fantasy XVI releases on PC, the team will do its best specifications and requirements ahead of time, so players can determine if the game will run on their PCs. And to do that, we're looking to release a demo for the PC version as well, he adds. Again, we can't really talk about too much in terms of details when it's going to come out. I think in a little bit, we'll be in a better place to announce things, but one thing's for sure, it won't be too distant in the future. It won't be a year, it won't be 2 years, it'll probably be shorter than that, so stay tuned. So if it won't be a year or 2 years, that implies that it's this year, which is really good. I think that a lot of times PC versions take way too long to come out. However, I think that this one coming sometime this year would be fairly appropriately timed, and many people would buy it. Next, we have a Famitsu interview from YoshiP that says some really interesting things, including how he wants to return to the director's role. Now, for those who don't know, with Final Fantasy XVI, YoshiP was not the director. Hiroshi Takai was. However, YoshiP is the director and producer of Final Fantasy XIV. But now, he's interested in being the director again for a brand new game. Is it Final Fantasy XVII or a brand new IP? This interview comes translated to us by Audrey at Aitai Kimochi, so be sure to give her a follow. This is what the interview has had to say. Shimoda, aside from Final Fantasy XIV, do you plan to take on the director role for any other title? YoshiP, it's completely undecided as of now, but if the opportunity arises to work on the next major title, I would like to direct it myself. Shimoda, I'll be looking forward to that then. Timing wise, would there be more than one title? Well, before, when I thought about passing on my baton to the next generation, I thought I probably can do at least one more title to my name. However, by doing so, I would be setting my own ceiling and limiting myself. This in turn would also cause those around you to work according to what you set. He then continues saying, recently though, I've been thinking that it might be better to not set a ceiling. As to my reasoning, well, a company is an organization after all, and an organization's decision making is usually based on the top management and their logic to pass judgment. If I were to fall into the trap of thinking I can only do one more title, then it might be marked as something odd like Yoshida's masterpiece, which isn't a good look. For example, I'm in my 50s right now and still snowboarding, and the more I snowboard, the better I become. I honestly think I'm at my peak at the moment, no joke. I feel like I can push even further. So in lieu of that, I haven't set a cap for myself. So you haven't set a limit for yourself. That's another good thing I've heard today. I feel like setting a cap will make things awfully boring. It's of course good to set goals and to gain that momentum, but as an organization grows larger, I think a better way to approach it is, we don't know what the future holds, so why not challenge ourselves each time? I think that's definitely a better way to look at it. I hope I can take even greater leaps to the likes I have never imagined. That is some awesome king speech from Naoki Yoshida. I love to see that even in his 50s, he still has that vigor to go and create more games, and doesn't want to slow down. He views himself as a man in his prime, and I think that he absolutely should. While Yoshida has done work on 14 and 16, we've never seen him direct a Final Fantasy game from the ground up to be exactly what he wants it to be. Though he was very active in the development of 16, it was still ultimately Hiroshi Takai's project. So I think it would be really cool to see him direct something from the ground up, and whether that's a new IP, whether that's Final Fantasy XVII, I would be incredibly interested to see what CBU3 has going forward. That being said, of course, I do hope that their next project does take a lot of feedback from Final Fantasy XVI. The lack of RPG elements and many other criticisms that the game had that I have pointed out, as well as many others, I think have a lot of validity to them. And I'm a big fan of CPU 3. I would love to see them build off of what they have and create something even more incredible. But these are just my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours. Do you hope that Yoshida's next big game is Final Fantasy 17, or do you hope it's a brand new IP? And do you want to see more from Final Fantasy 16's world? These are all questions that I am dying to see what you guys have to say about. So please let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video.